Welcome to Podcast This Escape, the podcast where we talk about the escape room that we escaped from in the previous episode of this podcast. We have just escaped from Jen's dimension hopping time room.
Yep,
We did it!
time, it's been escape rooms, and now it has been, well, time again, sort of.
Time again,
and
sort of.
Dimensionalness,
It was
sort
great
of.
fun is what it was.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you
I
so much.
Excellent. So, since it is just finished, I will point out there's one part of the room that I usually just point out right afterwards.
Ooh.
That a lot of people don't pick up right away, but it's a pretty cool part. And that is why were the puzzles in that order?
Oh, the final solutions of
Yeah,
Axis plane holds?
Yeah. It's not just that that's what makes the sentence make sense.
Good, because I was going to ask what makes those in order, because it felt like I was just doing them fairly arbitrarily.
What was the order?
Well, where
Hold
do we
on.
get Axis from?
Axis was from the lights.
The lights, which were a one-dimensional line. Plane was from the
Oh, no.
frog, which moved two-dimensionally up and down the room. The holds was
Cube was
from
a cube.
the cube, which was in
And
three
the
dimensions.
Tesseract was a
and the
4D
Tesseract was a
cube?
four-dimensional
Yep.
cube. That's why.
And
They were dimensions.
not only is the order based on the dimensions, but each of the individual words is like something that represents that dimension. So an axis,
Axis
a
is one
plane,
dimension.
Oh my
Yeah.
holds
god.
being like a three-dimensional thing, and then chronological for 4 dimensions.
There you go.
Holds would have never occurred to me for that.
Now,
but, oh.
Listeners at home, you can't see right now just how smug Jen looks.
It's true. It's true. I look very smug.
While we very much appreciate that fun fact, there is nobody in the world who appreciates that fun fact more than Jen.
Nope, not at all.
You can see why you're a pro puzzle hunt person. Just having all of those connections string together like that. Oh, dang. But yeah, that's something that normal minds just don't do.
Well,
Yeah,
yes. So I
really
came
cool.
up with axis plane, and then I'm like, oh my god, can I make this work as a sentence?
Yes. The security guards, the 4 security guards, why do their names seem so suspiciously Clue-like?
It's because they came from a alien name random generator.
That's how they get you.
Was that the planets as well?
Yes. Yeah. Every name in here except for like 1 or 2 came from a alien name or planetary name random generator or whatever.
It was Etal's name. It just seems so suspicious.
Et al. Oh my gosh, he's been writing papers forever.
And then Exons is I don't know. Exons is the word 7, but with an X instead of a V. Yeah, think
Interesting.
about it.
You're right, let's solve this puzzle.
Well, so
Yeah, look, I had so much fun with this. It was wild. It was so much. It's always so like when you do lots of rooms from different people, it's really hard to keep jumping into the level that you should be doing stuff.
Oh yeah, you got to know which which brainscape that person is currently in.
Yeah.
And
like we were still kind of going at a different sort of like, not
Yeah.
even like a different level of difficulty, but a different expectation for how much you
Yeah.
should be
the
doing and
last
how much will be
room,
given.
the last room that we did, I felt very much like, oh yeah, this feels obviously not like I don't know how to say this without it sounding weird. It felt like exactly the same level that I think I write. It felt like it fitted in nicely with how my brain normally sits at the like that my brain's default puzzle design mode. It felt like that fit in nicely there. And I know that your puzzle making default is not anywhere near the same as my puzzle making default.
Nope.
It just wouldn't occur to me to do stuff like this.
yeah, that's fair. I
So
mean,
yeah, it took a bit.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, there is, and it's certainly a thing that I look at with escape rooms and puzzle hunts in general, just looking at different stuff. But I definitely like I purposely try to write escape rooms for people who like puzzles.
Yeah.
Because like when I do escape rooms with my friends, there usually has to be an added level of difficulty added on in order to make it like a very super fun experience. So that might be like Ange and I go and do a room that's designed for 6 people on our own. Or it might be that like we are blatantly taking the best people we know and attempting to break the record of this room. Or possibly my favorite is I'm taking a group of students with me, and I'm attempting to solve all of the puzzles before they do, so I can hint them on the puzzles so that they can solve them, right? Like escape rooms. I love like public escape rooms. They're wonderful. They do really cool things, but they're also meant for the general public to be able to solve. So my brain works on you're good at puzzles. Now go do this, and I can write for less than I can choose to turn that down. Like I write puzzles for the students I teach all the time, and for that I definitely have to bring it down just because they're 13, 14 years old, right?
Yeah.
Although actually I'm teaching seniors this year, but anyway.
It's definitely a skill though, because it's not just making a puzzle harder or adding a different element to them. Those are different things.
Yeah. I mean, they can often come together, but if you think about something like doing a Sudoku, right? There's this level of Sudoku where you can solve a Sudoku from easy difficulty up to hard difficulty
without changing your method.
With no method change. You are always going, are there two numbers that dictate that there can't be a number here?
Yeah.
And then maybe at hard difficulty you start doing can I get two numbers to get me one number that could be placed in a couple of ways, but that is in one vertical line, so I can still knock off the rest of that vertical. Even though I can't place this number, I can know that no matter where it's placed, it still disallows these.
So you're just being
and
able to look a few steps ahead. And then you get to the magical Sudokus with different rules.
Yeah, or even just on a normal Sudoku where the expectation is now I understand these weird X-wing things where if there's something in this top right corner or something in this bottom right corner, there can never be something in either of these corners because they would 7 steps in be disproven by and you start to learn new techniques and new logical things.
I suppose so, but I think that it's more like the killer Sudokus and things like that where new rules are actually added and yet still don't ruin the initial Sudoku-ness, because that's the tricky part. Making a maths-esque based escape room, it's fine to put maths in a room, but to still make it feel like a totally new element of escape room without ruining the escape roomness, that's not easy.
No.
But I suppose my thought is more, if you were given a random Sudoku, you don't know. One of the things you need to figure out is whether the creator expects you to be able to do X-wing solutions.
I see
or
what
whether
you're
they're
saying.
just no, I can. So, when we look at the Tesseract part, the 3 different levels that we don't know where we're going to be at is either we will find a thing that looks like this Tesseract with things highlighted and we will copy them on the Tesseract. Or we're going to solve some puzzle that will help us determine which numbers to press and then get a thing, which is the level we were at for this. Or the crazy level of we should play around with these numbers until we figure out
a rule
what
ourselves.
the rule is to determine the third number based on the first 2 inputs. And then after you've learned that rule, we can now get inputs, or we can get final things and backtrack to what the inputs would have been to get those final letters.
Yeah.
Which is not what we had to do. That would have been a step too far.
And that third level is what I've been writing for puzzle hunts all year too.
Exactly, right? So going into it, we don't know
we know that you can write all of those levels.
Yeah, right. So part of it is learning
Fair.
what level you are at for that puzzle solution. All right. And so I think a lot of it is going we did the Tesseract last because you kind of have to do the Tesseract last because it's the hardest one to figure out what is the expectation. And it's only after we'd exhausted everything else that you go, all right, well, look, we obviously aren't going to find anything that looks like the Tesseract, and so we can rule out level 1 of that difficulty levels. So let's start looking at difficulty 2. And as soon as you started saying, could these be directions, and we knew we only had the Tesseract left, then we could start to put that together.
So
that was also a classic case of we tell all of our guests, say your ideas even if you haven't finished them. Because the other person can finish them. You had that idea apparently for ages. If you'd said that near the start, we would have looked like geniuses.
You're right. I did consider, I saw a U and I went.
Talk things through, everybody.
A U, it was seeing a U and an L and then seeing I don't know, maybe we saw an Ulfie and then an Urfie or something like that. And I went, the only difference is an L and an R. That's so direction-y.
But say these things,
there were B's and O's.
Say them out loud.
I didn't know what that could be.
I was talking the whole time about my dumb frog ideas.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to solve the puzzle rather than stroke my own ego.
You're right. Apparently this is something that I still need to get better at.
Just say your bad ideas and they'll turn into good ideas. They're the magic of teamwork. teamwork.
Oh man.
What's actually fascinating though is that in both playtests that I did, in which they were fun things that happened, the room got much better. But the the squares Fibonacci one was the last one solved, and this one was solved much earlier, the Tesseract one. But that's also because I was test solving with 4 people instead of 2. And so when you have 4 people, there's a very different dynamic that goes on in that because part of what you want to do when you're designing for 4 is you want to give somebody who's not actively interacting with the game master something to do, which is why there's a lot of handouts in this. And that's an easy puzzle to figure out.
So that they can be sitting back and staring at it while the other people are doing the talking.
Yeah. Because it's all about noticing patterns.
Sense. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I felt pretty happy to finally get that root 5, and exactly what that meant. I was pretty happy with
wonderful.
So I did spot right away, it looked like coordinates. And then exactly how to input that. Took me a while, but...
And I think early on when we first saw that it was coordinates, we also didn't have in our head a good location for where that thing was. And it was after we clarified, like, it is in that cube.
Oh, yeah,
getting the bottom of that cube.
That was 100% that exact thing that you said was, it's a bit closer to the bottom than the top. Like, it's definitely going to those. That threw it wide open.
Because I think until then, I was just picturing it was like, oh, that's where it's been drawn, but it is just
I meant to ask about that. Like, did it have room to bounce around inside, or was it stuck?
Picturing it just floating around.
But I, again, just one of those fleeting thoughts that went too fast in my head, so I forgot.
Say it. Say your thoughts next time.
They go fast.
Just say them. Just keep talking.
We're going to learn a lot about how we work this season. Somehow more than last season, apparently. Last season, it was just an endurance battle to see how long we could last doing puzzles over a couple of weeks. This week, we're spreading them out a bit more. This season, we're spreading them out a bit more. So yeah, maybe we'll actually get to become better at puzzles this way.
and you learned not to put me in the penultimate episode.
We learned not to put Tommy in last. We did your room and then Tommy's room. They were both 3-hour rooms.
Yeah, that was a way too intense finish. We gotta make sure that doesn't happen again.
Tommy's room was so intensive just listening to it.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying they were amazing rooms. They just were not final rooms after having done 10 rooms in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You need to get yourselves all prepared for that. Like, we gave ourselves 3 days between this room and the last one that we did. And that was good. I think I needed 3 days.
Yeah. That's fair.
But no, look, I really enjoyed the way these went together. I kind of liked there was something in the way we could interact with everything was really nice that it did lead us back to we have to solve these lockers before we can do like it kind of brought us to these lockers. Like, these will have solutions. Like, we must be able to obtain these because there's nothing else to do other than the lockers. Like, it's our only goal. Like, having a second to think through and be like, come back and think, wait a minute, we can know where the game ends. Because I thought to myself,
that was a very clever one. You went out of the room and you came back and went, wait a second, I know how to add up numbers.
I didn't even think about it while I was out of the room, but I came back and I went...
You just looked at your page.
Yeah, I went, here's the issue. Where does it end when the game ends? But we can't get to the end of a game because there's too many moves. We're getting a new pull every time. And look, 5 presses means we can only get 5 cards. So how are we going to figure out... And then, well, wait a minute. In the end, we're going to get all the cards, and I know what the numbers 1 to 9 add up to, so we can just do that.
Yeah,
no matter what
sense.
the sequencing, it always ends up in the same place.
And that's one of those questions that you do see in maths classes occasionally, where it's the ones where you can't do every step, but there is a nice, simple way to extrapolate, and students struggle with that because that's just not a skill that kids have easily until they're told to.
Kids are dumb.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely like when I coach math competitions, it's definitely a thing that comes up.
It reminds me very much of one of those ones where you've got to do, 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 ... plus 100.
Yeah.
And like the kids who have never seen that before just go, well, that's going to take me forever. What do I do? And now that you're more experienced, you go, if something seems like it's impossible, there must be a trick. Otherwise, they wouldn't give it to you.
Yeah. My favorite is that in math competitions, they will have problems that use the current year. So it's like, it's the 2021 competition. So they just throw 2021 and think, I'm like, okay, there's clearly a way to do this quicker if it uses the current year in it. It's just a cool little trick. It also means that it's it's really good to memorize the prime factorization of years, because it ends up
What?
just helping with those kinds of problems.
I feel like you have some specific ones in your head right now, and that you're thinking of, and I have no idea what that could be as a question.
Oh, jeez. I mean, I could go through and find.
Oh, I've got a good one.
All good.
There's always that question of what are the next two numbers after 19? Typical question. You know, thinking, I
good
see,
point,
I remember,
good
because it's
point.
the current year. That's how I
Yeah.
could figure that one out.
So you just write 2021 for every answer.
Yeah, and
Solid.
just hope it's all right
Right.
occasionally. But no,
No,
like,
so it's
so that was
it's
really
like
fun.
yeah. So an
please.
example would be like how many. It's a more of a boring one in this case, but how many factors? How many divisors does 2021 have?
Oh, okay.
A lot.
Does it?
None. It's a prime number.
No, so 2021 isn't prime. I think it was 2019 that was prime. 2021
Huh.
is 43 times 47. So it's
Ooh.
just 143, 47, and 2021. But
How
there's
about that?
a really cute one. If 2020, when you factor it, if I remember correctly, it's just 2 squared times 5 times 101. If I remember correctly, I think 101's prime. Yeah. So what you do is you write out the prime factorization, you take the exponents, and then add 1 to each of them and multiply them to get the total number of factors.
Oh my god, I don't know this at all.
Yeah, so it's 2 squared times 5 times 101, so the exponents are 2, 1, and 1, and then you add 1 to each of those, so you get 3, 2, and 2, and therefore it's going to have 12 factors.
What the? Okay.
All right, sure.
Damn. Yeah. Maths
Math
has
tricks.
a lot of tricks that I am very much not aware of. Once you start going past the normal year 10-ish curriculum, we're into stuff that I have forgotten or not learned.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I did do more maths than that. I did do more maths than just year 10 level maths.
Yeah, you just
I've
forget.
just forgotten a lot of it.
But no, it was really nice. I like that the solution to the number one thing is you can't ask them all 3 questions because he'll be like, "Why are you asking me my password?" But any individual question is fine, effectively.
In its way.
Which,
Yep, that makes
which works
sense.
really well. I think that makes perfect sense,
I-
and it's a good use of that mechanic of the reset.
Yeah,
in a
so
logical
I
way.
wanted to talk about that, exactly which ones really necessitated the use of that reset. And like the board game planet thing necessitated it as an obstacle, so that you had to use the extrapolation and to understanding that you did know the final result even if you couldn't play it yourself. So it needed to be there for that.
You had to, because you were forced to know that you couldn't play through the whole thing. Like it was like
Yeah.
you can't go through this. Time will reset, so you
Mhm.
had to think, wait a minute, could I work it out anyway?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, of course I can.
Exactly. And so, yes, talking to the guard, absolutely. You
was
just had
wondering-
to ask him one question, then abuse him 4 times.
And now it makes perfect sense as to why Jen was so, like, about 3 or 4 times described the fact that it's a deck of cards, each one being drawn. It's not generating the same random numbers on a screen. It is physical cards.
Yep.
Yep.
They are being drawn.
Yeah. I made a mental note of that at the start, just going, cool, it's cards with the numbers 1 to 9. Great.
As if you were choosing them with no replacements. So that made sense.
What other one? Were
The
there
frog was
other-
interesting. I think the
Ooh.
frog threw me off because I feel like the initial time it happened, it was the frog moves, you press like the colors, the frog moves, then it turns white. And I think the way that worked, as I said, is like the frog moved, and I was like, cool. And now I press the other colors. And
But
he was like,
when they
it's
were
gone white
white,
now. It's all gone white.
it
no
was,
colors. And
oh,
I went,
therefore we
so
need to
we can't be
reset it
pressing
again.
colors. Because I was picturing myself pressing them. You're like,
Yeah.
no, they're
Yeah.
all white now. It doesn't do anything. When in fact it was all white. So what do you want to press? But like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
instead it was,
that's fair.
you know, and that like not even a miscommunication because I don't think anybody said the wrong thing. Just like misinterpretation of
Yeah.
what was going on
Yeah,
there. Because
totally.
I was picturing, so now I can't press the buttons anymore. It's whited out. It has you can't press the buttons. You have to do one, reset it, do the next. Because now that they are not colored, you literally cannot press them and nothing will happen. Is how I interpret that in my head. And so that's why I didn't ever think to press the white buttons again. Because I've already established I can't press these buttons.
That's fair.
Yeah, and usually when there's like a big like misinterpretation like that, usually somebody
becomes
says
clear.
something that like makes like doesn't make
Yes.
sense. So I can like try to like go back and go, why do you think that? But because of this,
But
particular
instead,
thing,
we just abandoned the frog.
right, you just abandoned it. So like I'm trying to get you to pay attention to it, which maybe was not the right thing to do. Maybe the correct thing was, if you have omniscience, the correct thing to do is to like tell you what the interpretation should have been.
Yeah, because it wasn't me like not paying attention to the fact that it went white. I was like, yeah, I know it goes white, and I can't press them anymore.
Yeah.
They turn white, you can't press them, and the frog's done, and it can't move anymore. That's what I understand that you told me already.
I think one thing that frightened me off making certain decisions in regards to answering the puzzles was that some of those password bits, like the Tesseract one, that was really long. So on each of the 4 panels of clues, there was this really long section. And then there was just this Fibonacci squares. So that was so short that I was sure there must have been more to it. It couldn't have just been those 2 things on its own because that's so tiny. How can a password be made out of 2 things?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that mentally threw me into the wrong place, assuming there had to be more things for the short ones.
And yeah, the other issue with that is, yeah, I had tried to do the squares thing of putting in each of the square numbers, but I was trying to do that because I thought that's what you were saying when you were actually saying start putting in the Dultho Durbo stuff. Because something about like, because I think one of them had like a 4 and a 16 in it or something, and I was like, yeah, cool, so we're putting in all the squares, right? Great, I'll do it. And you went, no, and then we never came back to that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But also, you had already said do all the Fibonacci's, and I was so set on binary back then that I was like, no, let's do the binary first. Oh, it doesn't work, and we never did that either. Putting in just every Fibonacci number. I definitely got thrown off by the binary bit because it was kind of like we've got numbers, we have binary, and
But
I know
it was just binary was just because it's on and off, right?
Yeah, it was. So the binary is unfortunate. So the original, so that corner, one of the things that was going on, and I will concede this as a mistake, and I will probably reword this for when it actually gets published. So what you read last week is going to be slightly different than what you saw, if I have my chronological right. But so originally that was going to be like alien binary, and the Tesseract was going to be alien semaphore. And the semaphore, because that's if you imagine like it's putting stuff in 2 directions. That caused rabbit holes that were just way too bad. So I deleted the word semaphore from the Tesseract and instead just basically said it like, yeah, it's broken. It's not doing its thing correctly. But
putting the word semaphore in there may have frightened me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I didn't even think that I put the word binary on the lights one, and I probably should have gotten rid of that along with getting rid of the semaphore, even though that did not cause my test solvers a problem.
Yeah, see, I wasn't quite as caught up on binary as you. Like, the word was definitely still in my head thinking, oh, we will have to use that at some point. Not quite. I think just something about the fact that those lights were labeled 1 to 23. And as soon as you see a number 23 on something, the idea of binary sort of gets thrown out a little.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah, I think I wasn't quite as fixated on you, but it was definitely still in my head as something we would have to do something with.
But it just meant when I was trying to put in numbers, I was like, I know how to do each of the square numbers in binary.
Yeah, you just happen to have had a lot of binary practice.
So I'll start putting them in binary and see what it outputs because this is a thing that I can put binary numbers into. And so, yeah, 100% I got completely... Because I was like, that says 3, but that's just because it's the 3rd button, but actually it's 4.
Yeah, so this is one of those ones where there's just... especially when you are dealing with players who know how to handle this sort of stuff, it's much easier to accidentally create more options for yourself.
Yeah, and it's fun. The whole binary thing is funny because behind the scenes, it basically converts the lights to binary, throws it into a function, and then outputs a letter based on that function. So it is actually binary.
I was going to ask, that and the Tesseract. What was going on there?
The Tesseract is a giant lookup table. So it's a 16 by 16 table, but it has mirror symmetry, so you can put the letters in either order. So like DO is the same as OD. And I literally just went on random.org and got random letters and then changed it so that chronological worked.
Nice.
Actually, I think I just put in random letters and didn't change it. I just looked for the word letters in chronological in the table.
That's fair as well.
Yeah, that's mad. When it finally got to that one, I know it took longer than it should have, but I did feel good.
It was great. It was a
Finally
really
got
fun
there.
puzzle to do. It was weird that it was still fun, like, after having done so many of them. Like,
Yeah.
it was still like, I'm enjoying this process of looking these up and checking which one it is. And it was just a fun thing to do.
That's good.
Oh.
So you mentioned, by the way, the different puzzles that involve the time. So actually, there's the hidden structure in here is that there's basically 2 rounds of puzzles. There's to get into the locker and then to get into the pedestal, and all of the puzzles to get into lockers either use or are hindered by the fact that the room is resetting, and the other ones are the dimensional puzzles. The 1, 2, 3, 4
Yep,
dimensions.
that's fair. So, the ones where we had to talk to Atals to get his info, that definitely needed it. Subtitle of the game, that involved having to wait
You
through
had to
until
set
the
it up
very
at
end.
the start and go to the end.
Yep, and then the clock, how fast things accelerate, so that
needed to use
was
them as well.
per light coming on.
Here's the real question.
I'm glad that we finally went, hey, that clock's still the same. That could have happened at any point.
True.
We could have asked that immediately. We could have asked that 2 hours in.
No.
Yeah.
Here's the real question.
Mhm.
Have you worked out the theoretical minimal number of lights to finish, or
How
minimal
many
number of resets
resets?
and lights to finish the room?
I have
If you do
not
everything
worked out
perfectly.
the theoretical minimum.
You know, you figure like Hollow Game requires a full reset. The password
Well, yeah.
requires 3 resets for password number 1.
Mhm.
But between those, you could do those on the same sets of resets.
Right.
One light for
Yeah,
Hollow
the
Game
c-
turning on, another light for the first question. Third light, you could then check, or even over those,
I
you
mean,
need
yeah, the
that
clock
minimum to check the acceleration. You
Just
get 3
is
lights. You
incidental.
can do that on the third light. On the
The
fourth
board game,
light,
you don't necessarily even need any if you're quick enough.
No, if a board game is a 0 light
Yeah.
solution, if you want to, because you can
Yes.
just look at it and say,
Yeah.
wait, cards 1 to 9, I know where they end up. Don't even need to press it once. Because all that's really just almost like a red herring, because we don't need to know the intermediate steps.
Correct.
I think you could almost do all 5 of those on the first. You just need the
Well,
resets
wait,
for
we're
the-
inputting things. Things like getting the hints was a
Inputs
light causer as well.
required- Yes, that's true. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 lights. So on the first run, you could go
Or speed
Plug the
running.
game in.
hint.
Or-
But you wouldn't want to, because you'd be wasting one of your resets.
No, yeah,
from-
you'd
from
want
the
to
point-
do
so you'd
plug the
go
game in, then
game,
hint,
call,
hint.
But you wouldn't want to,
No,
because
no,
you
no.
don't want to waste that first
No?
reset, because you need to spend 3 whole resets
Oh,
to get
sorry,
the clue.
I
And
see
that's
what
going to
you
be
mean.
in excess of the actual
Yeah.
number of button presses we need. So you'd go plug, hint, and then use the final one to get the first part of the password. That
Yeah.
then gets you the last password. You've now locked.
Assuming, of
unlocked
course,
4.
that you.
Meanwhile, you could do 3.
Now,
and then I think you just wait.
That is assuming you're basing a little bit on luck there that one of the lockers that you got a hint for was indeed locker 1, so you knew the information that you needed to get though.
This is just theoretical. This isn't assuming.
No.
you
If
can
you're
do
talking
it.
about theoretical minimum, then you definitely got the one for locker 1 in the first one. right?
Whatever.
But yeah, so I think it's 3 resets at the beginning in the first half of it, and then you have all the panels. Probably. I mean, it seems correct. And then the frogs each basically require their own reset. But
Yeah.
so that's another 5.
Mhm.
But to be fair, you can double some of those up, because once you've unlocked
Mhm.
one of the panels,
Oh, you can unlock.
you can do the frog while you're still getting the clues to unlock panel number 1. As long as you remember the order, you could start doing frog moves on the same resets that you're getting password 1 clues from Etals.
Again, how.
Well, so the only
Maybe?
one, like, you've got the L that's 2, and you've got the N that's 3, and then
Yeah.
you've got P is 4 and 2 5s. So like the A and the E have to be on their own. The P only gets 1 extra thing to deal with, which can be just putting in a password. And then the L you might be able to stick with something else. I think that's how you can shave
Oh,
off.
but you're right.
one.
They do take a full reset.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything where you can also get in 1 extra clue, you might be able to double check. Well, hey,
We'll
if you're
figure this
listening at
out.
home and you want to figure this out,
This
send
is
us an
fun,
email
though.
and tell us the exact minimum, and then do a speed run. Call Jen.
This does feel
She
like
can host a
something a
room for
YouTuber
you,
would destroy.
And you do
I
a
love
speed
it.
run. Let's
Yeah.
call Game Champ
All right.
she can do a full speed run.
Okay, so we've
This
talked
room.
a lot.
VG myths.
Yeah,
What is the
exactly.
minimum number of button light ups that you need to complete Jen's escape?
I mean, it does seem like the sort of thing VG Myths would
We'll get in
be
context.
really good at. All right, so we had talked about our experience with the room plentifully. Tell us the origin story of this room, Jen.
Yeah, so the origin story of this room was so I've had the 5 steps and then a reset thing. That was kind of like, actually, Eldritch Garden was going to be a role-playing game thing that I wanted to do. I wanted it to be a sci-fi, like a Starfinder kind of thing.
Nice.
But I just kind of had it. It was really like coming from nowhere. But the thing was that I sat down and was trying to figure out I just had that, and I had nothing else for years. Like this came out this is probably my next great idea to use after Eldritch Garden. So probably 2 years at least of thinking this would be a cool thing to do with this area. But I couldn't get a good secondary grasp on what it was. So in Eldritch Garden, I'm like, okay, I've got the time travel, and then the secondary grasp was, all right, let's do this in a garden, right? And because that gave me the, I guess, spoilers for Eldritch Garden, but you should go listen to it. It's the tree growing puzzle was the thing that really made me want to put it in a garden. So for this one, I didn't have that until I was like, well, I really want this to be a tesseract. I want there to be a tesseract when you're talking about time stuff. That seems like it would be cool. And especially because I have this really cool the idea kept coming in my mind because I teach honors geometry, and we have one day that is just what does the fourth dimension look like. And so that every time that lesson came up, I would teach it, I would come back to this idea. And then the thing that sealed it together was realizing the axis plane. I was all right, can I make all the words fit in this sentence? And can I justify why I have a tesseract and a time loop and an Axis and Allies game all together? And then when I originally pitched the idea of just the time loop, I had this idea of you went to go take a item from somebody, and it turns out it's a cultural artifact, and this is the item's defense mechanisms, and what you needed to do was go put it back. And so this is you trying to solve and get it back. And my wife's that's super colonialist. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, it is. It is super cool, and it took me a little while to fully get a hold of that. Is it
super colonialist, or is it just super accidentally colonial? You're still trying to give it back appropriately.
Well,
who is the appropriately that you're giving it back to?
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so it was, but this kind of setup where you're stealing it back for somebody who it was, and especially after seeing the James Acaster bit about the British Museum. Which if you haven't seen is wonderful. But it really convinced me to go to the Evil Museum thing.
It's really wild when you look into this stuff. Why is everything that is so nice and lovely and seems like it should be just a great thing, like a museum, a beautiful, pure place of history and knowledge, and it's still evil and a testament to how horrible humans are?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Just to constantly go oh, here's another one.
Yep.
Oh, yep, here's another one. Lovely. Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
All right. So, cool. All right. So now, we've talked a lot about the playtests and how things have gone down in there. Are there any other changes that you want to talk about?
So,
or anything that we did particularly differently? I'm sure the ATAL's information gathering all went down pretty differently.
But that's the way to do it.
No, I liked the porn name. Most teams got really thrown off guard because they tried one question at a time and then were thrown off by the second one, whereas you tried to get all of them at once and then did that. The big, like, there was a couple really big changes that got made. I think the two big changes. So the first was that, so Bill, you mentioned that there was like signposts, like things told you had to open the guard stuff, right? And then that got you to things. So originally there weren't a lot of those there, and what happened was that, like, because I had in Mystery Escape Team Adventures, there is a computer with a password that has a password hint when you put in a wrong password, and almost every group sees that computer and goes, I'm going to put in like butts or something like that just to make it thing. And the password hint pops up. And that seemed to be a very good way of like giving them a hint to the password. So originally the password hints were not buttons. They were just, you put a thing in and then you got a wrong thing and then you got the password hint, which focused you.
Sure.
And then I had one group not do that. And it turns out...
Which to me is very understandable in this room because you've kind of set up a pseudo punishment.
Your actions are being monitored.
Because every time you do a thing, it's being counted, so you don't want to waste time. You feel like you might lose something.
Right. So, but it meant that they were like flailing for a while because they didn't have any, like, that was the main direction in the room. They didn't have any direction.
That is fair. That would be tricky.
So all of the, like, there's like multiple things that say, like, mention the password hints. The password hints are a separate button, and that was to give you that direction. Like originally,
I'm comfortable with that.
That was a major change. The also changes that there was a fifth dimensional puzzle. There was a fifth dimension puzzle that was terrible. I look back at this and can't believe I gave that to people. It was a really cool. I mean, the problem is the fifth dimension is just so hard of an idea to put a puzzle in. And
was this where the word escape? What was this originally going to give you the word escape?
It was originally going to give you the word escape. Yes. And so the problem is, like, everything you have to do is so theoretical, but, like, while I'm dealing with puzzle hunters, I'm not dealing with mathematicians, and I can't guarantee that they are able to do that, like, kind of thing. So it was
right.
It just got axed. And solved another, like, problem with the sequencing at the end, so it was, yeah.
Gotcha. I do admit, 4 dimensions, I'm already not, crazily comfortable dealing with Tesseract in 4th dimension, but once we hit 5th, that is now a bit of a blank wall.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
4th, you can at least
which I'm sure that's appropriate.
Let me try and extrapolate one step further from what I actually physically understand. And when it's like, now let's extrapolate from something I already don't understand, which is
like I've heard the 11 dimension theory or whatever and what each one represents, but I can't remember.
But even then, I don't think those are all spatial dimensions anyway.
No, a lot of them just end up being hypothetical. Isn't it just the last one ends up being cool? So this represents everything that is, was, will be, could be, will not be.
So I guess we're stuck. I guess that's where we got to finish up.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, all anyway, of those ones start to throw me.
But yeah, so actually, I was worried about this going actually quicker because there's only 8 puzzles.
But you forget we're ridiculous.
That's true.
Well,
and 8 puzzles is not nothing.
Well, so it's not nothing, but Mystery Escape Team Adventures is 17, and I forget the number for Eldritch Guardian. I think it's like 12 or something like that. So
was it really? Oof.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. No, I was very nervous at the start because of how much we were doing the usual podcast faffing about and just going, no, this is a gen room.
You gotta hurry up.
I don't think we can afford to do this.
Go quick.
We're putting all of our mental energy in coming up with puns for planet names. Are you kidding?
That's an important part of the process. And it's always a sneaky way to accidentally discover puzzles.
I mean,
true enough.
But no,
yeah. That is the other side. You're not just maths. You
true.
can also be terrible puns.
Yes, that is true. I can also be terrible puns. I do worry though sometimes. Like, it's one thing when I post puns in the Twitch chat. It's another thing when I like post puns that are designed to be said out loud, because like I am not a linguistics person and I don't completely understand how the different accents work.
Yeah, that's
I will
true.
say, it does happen when we see like a lot of times when there's like rebuses done on like Facebook groups that we're part of.
We
people
can't
post
get them
rebuses.
often.
We do often have to go, hold on, let me put on a really bad American accent. Maybe now it will be solvable. Oh, now it's solvable because they were like doing two words that rhyme in American English that don't rhyme in Australian English. Or things like that, and you get that. You do get it a weird amount.
Yeah, I had one like that back in one of my What Alice Found rooms where I had just sound-alike words. So there were some homophones going on. But then one of the ones that I initially had definitely had an R in the middle. And I just went, great, those aren't going to be homophones for most of our listeners. I guess I got to come up with something else.
Yeah, and yes, it comes up for me Mums, Sums, Sisra, Mezzacata, those puzzle hunts, it comes up like when you're solving them and you've got like cryptic clues that they put in. And it's like, it's a homophone cryptic clue. Wait, how do Australians pronounce this?
Yeah, right. You got to try and think of the accent of the person writing the clue.
Well,
we already had that. Oh yeah, go on.
My favorite Australianism in one of those was there was one that like came out to like drawing a picture, and we stared at this. You ended up drawing a picture at the end, and we stared at this picture for a while on our team until somebody finally asked somebody from Australia, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a picture of New Zealand. We all know what New Zealand looks like. Yeah, we're like, okay.
Oh man, yeah, we that was a funny thing that we had when we were in Japan. One of the Japanese hosts, wasn't it, who did that whole recognizing your own country thing. They basically had an image of Japan, but one of the islands of Japan had been altered, so it was now clearly a weird, distorted Australia. And of course, we recognized it as Australia right away, and they said, "Cool, people not from Australia don't do that." Like you recognize your own country because you're just so conditioned to notice it.
I honestly think they even said that Japanese people often don't do it because it was one of the islands that people don't care about quite as much, and also Japan doesn't like put its map on as many things as Australia does. Like Australians are really good at recognizing Australia.
Yeah, it could be.
But yeah, Japan, they're like, yeah, that's the rough shape of Japan, and just one of the islands was a different shape. It was like, no, but if you're Australian, it was just like, why is there a picture of Australia here?
I wonder how easy this is for non-island nations as well, because Australia, great. New Zealand, great.
Oh yeah, bloody Bolivian isn't going to recognize Bolivia, surely.
I don't. Well, maybe they can. I don't know.
That blob looks exactly like the blob I live in.
Yeah, I have no idea. If you are from a relatively landlocked country, how well can you do that? Like the US definitely can do that because the US map is shown everywhere.
You know who I reckon can do it really
Bolivians learn the Bolivian map a little bit at least, right?
Certain countries are just globs, you know.
I know.
I think France would do very well.
France
is just a hexagon.
Yeah, exactly. And they talk about their country being the hexagon. They say, like, we live in
Italy,
hexagon.
no problem at all.
L'hexagon is how they say it.
But even then, would you recognize that hexagon if someone suddenly just shifted their map around to swap Germany and France? How well would you recognize that that's now France?
I might recognize that France is not in the right spot, but I wouldn't recognize that Germany is somewhere else because I can't, for the life of me, tell you what Germany looks like right now.
Exactly. Blob.
It's a blob. You know who'd do really well?
If you are from a blob country,
if you're from a blob, let us know. If you're from Laos, you must know, right?
Oh,
you live
good
in a
point.
Palm
those ones have got some familiarity
or a
to
shooting
them.
star. You got to know. You got to be able to see that.
Vietnam,
like,
no doubt which one Vietnam is.
But yeah.
What are we talking about?
Who even knows anymore? Thank you. Why don't we end the episode? Thank you so much.
We have been going for a while.
That was heaps of fun. It was really good to.
Oh, I have one final question.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. The employer who got us to steal this device.
Fish gulp. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he a shark man? I drew him as a shark man.
Sure. I was thinking more octopus, but I'm a fan of Shark Man.
Cool.
I was just picturing Admiral Akbar.
See, it was interesting that we all went there. When we went into the room and we were going to examine the guard's dead body.
The dead guard.
My first question that, again, I had in my mind for a fleeting second and then decided not to ask was, is it human?
No.
Interesting.
And then I thought for a split second, wait, there has not actually been stated that we're dealing with any non-humans here.
That's true.
Just really assumed. And it seems like it was very fair, but it just hadn't explicitly come up, so I didn't ask, even though I had already drawn a fish man.
Yeah, so
He's more a shark man, really. I gave him a dorsal fin just to make it
so
clear.
cute.
So I, one of the things I was thinking about, again, I had this like side goal of like maybe I could put this into the Starfinder universe if I'm running this for friends or whatnot.
Oh, of course, right.
But I was debating on how much to make it obvious that that this was not human, and I decided I like the subtle details more than I like obviously stating things. So like making it very clear it's 1,000 years after you expect, just from like a side puzzle, or the little comment about Earth being flooded and how warlike it is, to give you just kind of an idea of what possibly happened. As opposed to like being directly stating it. But like that's why I'm not the great at writing like the intros or outros for stuff, but like I spent some time with the intro trying to make it so that like you slowly got some details that like we're in a sci-fi world, we're in like this
for sure. And the introduction saying cool, so a thing that happened on Earth before the flood, and then just leaving it at that's exactly what more story writers could benefit from being able to do.
Yeah, that's fair.
Your fishman looks exactly like my fishman.
Because I just drew it after your fishman.
Oh, I didn't know you'd looked at my fishman.
I saw your little fishman. I drew a new fishman.
Okay.
By the way, that is the final time it took you 19 iterations to get through.
I wondered if there was any track keeping.
I mean, we did get
a
bit iteration happy.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
There was no like it was going to keep going until you solved it, so it didn't really matter.
And again, if you want to figure out the theoretical limit, people at home, you can do it in fewer than 19 iterations.
Now that I've showed you that, I can erase this card.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and running us through another room. It was heaps of fun.
Thank you for having me.
You must have lots of things of yours that people at home can find of yours.
Yes, if people wanted to look at you and more of the stuff that you do, where can they find that?
So there's 2 places to look. Well, actually, really 3 places. So the first one, obviously, you can find me on Twitter, at Mers I am not, MERSIAMNOT. The second is my wife and I have a website where we post puzzles, some of them being just regular cryptics, some of them being weirder things that we like creating. And you can find that at apocute.com, APOCUTE.com. And then the last is, as I mentioned a couple times, I'm working on writing the Mystery Hunt, the MIT Mystery Hunt. So if you're going to be, we do not know at this point if it's going to be in person or not. But if we're in person and I'm around, come say hi. If we're not in person, then virtually come say hi, because I'm interested in hearing whatever Escape This Podcast people also do other stuff that I enjoy.
When is that on?
It's Martin Luther King weekend.
Sorry.
So it's it's like just name this holiday that Australians don't know. It's like January 17th, I think, is the Monday this year.
Too late. I thought it was around the 13th.
Yeah, well,
I knew it was January.
It means the hunt is going to start on that Friday, so it's 14th through 17th. But
Sweet.
Martin Luther King Day is the 17th.
Cool. So plenty of time to prepare your brains.
Prepare your brains, everybody. Start doing old mystery hunts to catch up for the new one.
Yep.
All right, lovely. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you all enjoyed this fun room and this fun debrief. You've already found our show, so welcome. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we're on Twitter at EskThisPodcast. We're on Instagram. The best way if you want to chat with us and chat with other fans of the show is to jump into the Discord. We have a link in the show notes of this episode to join the whole Consume This Media Discord. You can talk about all of our shows and other stuff and weird stuff you're doing and puzzles you're playing and whole things like that. You can also, if you want to support the show and the all the stuff that we make, you can donate to us on Patreon. It's how we keep making this show and other shows and things like that. And so anybody who donates has the chance to appear as an NPC in one of the rooms that Danny writes. But otherwise, for all of our $5 donors, there are bonus episodes, new one every week.
Yeah, thank you to our Patreon donor, Fish Gulp.
Yep, Fish Gulp on the Patreon. $5 donor, Fish Gulp. But no, you get there's bonus episodes. There's us solving a whole series of 2-minute mysteries. There are usually some audio of the playtest. Obviously, this season we don't have that, but we are instead doing like a retrospective podcast, This Escape, of our earlier rooms.
And also fixing them up for
And fixing
the
up and thinking
future
about
book version of them.
Yes.
And also, I don't know yet what your editing schedule is going to be like. This is now August for this one, right? So who knows? Maybe that if you are a Solve This Murder fan.
Yes, if you're a Solve This Murder fan, not only has, I'm going to say it, our new season definitely started, but for all of our $5 patrons, they also have access to the entire mystery from day one. Rather than having to wait week by week, they get the whole mystery all at once, and hopefully won't spoil it for all of you normal people. So if you like that, if you hate waiting and love murder, you should sign up to the Patreon. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank
That's
you for
like
listening.
80% of podcast listeners.
All right, bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.